And here begins Villa dei Misteri Revisited. In the first place, in 1984, part of the exhibition was brought in this old red suitcase. And some part of it was brought in this suitcase this time as well. Villa dei Misteri is the title of an installation shown for the first time in New York City in 1984. Work in those rooms was exhibited in many places in the world, but I was never able to reconstruct this first New York show. This finally was possible in the Pavilion of 4 Domes in Wrocław, a pavilion built before World War I and reconstructed 5 years ago, that has a wonderful space, white, all white, and so ideal for my installation. The title Villa dei Misteri refers to a villa in Pompeii. It's a villa with famous frescoes, perhaps the most beautiful Roman frescoes in the world. We all know what happened in Pompeii after the eruption of Vesuvius. Everything was obliterated and later rediscovered. And everything, in a way, became a mystery. The life of people, the art they did, and the daily life. History tells us something about the past, but not really about the life of individual people and not very much about the meaning of art. And this is a reference to this obliteration and to only fragments and contours and outlines of images staying with us and inspiring us to invent stories in analogy to our own life. The reference to Villa dei Misteri is a reference both to Pompeii, that has always reminded me of Warsaw when I was a child, Warsaw in ruins, and also a reference to the obliteration and to the mystery of human life and of art. Here's a very large curtain that's depicting myself falling asleep and waking up. It's one of my first large works on raw cotton. When I was still drawing folds, later on, I realized that I can make folds. I can use raw cotton in a more evocative ways, that made folds and creases made by myself will be of a stronger expression than any drawings, as you can see it on this curtain. I have chosen raw cotton because it reminds me of skin. It has a wax color tone, and I have selected a red felt pen to make the allusion to the way we can hurt skin when blood is appearing. It's a very organic technique, and it's not stone, it's not bronze, it's nothing permanent. It's just the opposite of permanence. And the cotton can be very easily destroyed. And in my early pieces, I referred also to the destruction of both the drawing and the material itself. Again, later on, I concentrated more on the material itself. Here, slightly later, I actually cut cotton and then I sewed it with a red string. And the red string is like the line, that it's coming out and it has, again, a stronger reference to blood. And here the folds are already made and not drawn. The people used as models in this room are myself, Helmut, who was then and is still a companion of my life, my mother and my brother. So a very close circle of relatives. Why? Because I work mostly from photography. I'm also a photographer, and I'm taking pictures of what is close to me, because I know them best and I can draw them best. Circle of my models is very limited, but this creates also a sense of unity, because you can recognize the same faces, similar gestures, similar expressions. And here is a curtain of Helmut smoking a cigarette. Not so much because he was a chain smoker, but because I always found the gesture of smoking extremely evocative. It's a gesture that I liked much, very much, and so I have included it in this large curtain. Here's Helmut again, and a very similar procedure. Again, instead of the line was cut, then sewn, the string goes into the glass. Everything will remind people of something. People who are religious, maybe even of religious things. I myself am an atheist, and I was maybe inspired by religious art, but I also thought that religion shouldn't monopolize any themes. So I liked to take on themes which were sort of reserved for religious art and give them a different meaning. Meaning that of fragility of human life, of suffering, and also of joy, and mostly of memory, and also of forgetting and obliteration and fragmentation. Here's a selection of chairs, my first large and perhaps best known installation made in the United States. I first exhibited 2 or 3 chairs in 1981 at my Boston exhibition at the Hallenstein Gallery. This was a very successful show, and in the fall of 1982, I was invited to San Francisco to the 12th International Sculpture Conference. On the photos, black and white photos from those days, you couldn't see exactly what this is. The organizer asked me how much it would cost to transport my chairs from New York to San Francisco. I said, well, you have to buy me a ticket. I will fly in, and in my suitcase, I will bring the entire exhibition, but you have to provide for me simple white kitchen chairs. And they did that. As it happened, a college closed down, and there were 1,200 white chairs. And I regretted that I have only 12 drawings to sit on them. This is a selection from those chairs. Later I made more of them. 2 are relatively simple and quiet. 2 in the background are more dramatic. The difference between them is also that the 2 first ones are already a little bit faded. They were exhibited a lot more. And those in the background were exhibited less. The color is stronger. They were hardly ever exhibited, so their color is stronger and the expression is stronger. And I made also similar chairs for Helmut. Maybe altogether there are perhaps 50 or 100 chairs. So I made, each time I exhibit, I have to make a selection. And this time I selected those 3 chairs, including the chair with an old dog, because the director of this museum has a very old dog in her office. And so this is a little homage to the dog and to the fact that making installations, you can change each time and adapt to the circumstances that you find. So in a way, everything is for the first and for the last time. It's not work that is fixed once forever. This is a room where I play with identity, which is one of my actually favorite interests, the fluidity of identity. That I really have no belief in any fixed identity, it's more of a stereotype. And here you have me and Helmut, half of him is male, half of him is female. And here it's the opposite. So there are such hybrids. Such hybrids as they were popular throughout the ages, but always found a little strange and maybe forbidden. Here is more of a conventional depiction, sort of a little bit a take on the form of the odalisque. Helmut looking at my picture, I'm looking at his picture. And in the middle is a sort of frieze made of cotton, a piece that I had never shown because I had never enough space for it. So it was always folded, and often it traveled with me in a suitcase, but it was never taken out. Here I decided that we have a good spot to show this frieze that shows that you can play with cotton as if you played with stone, but it has a very different meaning and a very different feel. I mostly work with red felt pens, but in the late 80s I began to add blue, and often blue in a sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek form, referring to the red for women and to the blue for men. So here I am drawing a picture, a portrait of Helmut on my own belly in blue, while he has the portrait of me on his knee. In the middle is, we are both, is a large piece for which I constructed this little table. It falls onto the table and it goes under the table. And you have both folds drawn and folds real. And I think the real folds are actually more evocative than the drawn ones. I strongly believe that in art, less is more. A smaller selection of work, showing certain ideas and certain concepts of presentation, is better than showing a lot and repeating oneself. So here I just indicate that if you show this work, for instance, on red, the red will color the images in a different way that you would color it by hand. It's the operation of light and the background that creates the pink inside. Then again, the same idea of the string, but a piece that is folded on the ground. If you put it drape it on the chair, hang it under the tree. I made also many installations in outdoor installation. Everything will have a different character. Here, it's suspending like a piece of clothing. Finally, in the last room, with my earliest work, and with the portrait of my brother Piotr, who had a very tragic story and of whom I made many drawings, but decided to show only this one, a drawing when he was mentally very unstable, and you can perhaps see this in this drawing. And I presented everything the way it was often presented in my own studio, just suspending things on lines like washing in the most simple way, or folded in some ways on chairs or suspended in the air. So very, very simple. My first large installations were all done across the Atlantic. When I started to do this work, it was very strange and unfamiliar in Poland, but installation in some parts of the world was already quite a familiar language of art. So I displayed this, for instance, at the Biennale in Colombia, in Medellin, in the spring of 1981. Everything was suspended in such a simple way.